One thing that came off my mind is, would you say currently as a generation, our generation, people are becoming a bit less intellectual? For example, talking about reading, do you think less people are reading nowadays compared to before, despite the fact that information is actually so much more readily available than before? The medium of delivering, let's say, a book, it can be done online digitally, but people prefer to do other things, perhaps, entertainment, for example, watch Netflix.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the books being published, they are becoming more and more superficial. They're shorter in length, and they are much more blend. I mean, I'm now working on a biography of Benjamin Disraeli, written in the 60s by an Oxford Don, Robert Blake. And it's about 800 pages long. And I don't think new books would be this long at all. In fact, no. This is not the first Disraeli biography that I read. The first one I read was about, maybe 10 years ago. And that was about only 200 pages. I read that. And at the time I thought, oh, this book is way too commercial. It's so fragmented and obviously tailored for people with a attention span. And at the time I had just graduated, and I found that book to be not in depth enough for my taste, and I picked up on this one, and now I'm working on it. Forgotten about it, but now I'm reading through it, and I keep thinking as I read it that not that many people nowadays will be able to do what I'm doing, which is to get through a book at a slow pace at night. People would find that too boring. So yes, I think people have said me, and it's to do with smartphones. It has completely changed me. My biggest Hong Kong idol, Sir David Tang, wrote in his last book. It's not really a book; it was just a collection of his Financial Times columns. It's called A Guide for Modern Life. And he wrote that even he suffered from a reduced attention span due to the use of smartphone. I think that's inevitable. And it's very sad because it means that people can't really, I think a rich life is also a deep life. You've got to think deeply, engage in things that are profound in order to, really enjoy things at their best. But unfortunately, people aren't quite able to do that now. And I think I would agree with Sir David Tang that we are all victims. No one can claim that their attention span is as good as before the age of smartphones.
That's completely true. And I think the current trend is really, our attention spans are getting shorter. There are, for example, a lot of apps at the moment that actually summarizes books and try and basically convert them into, let's say, a 5-10 minute audio sort of segment. And it summarizes everything. But I think the issue for most people when they think about reading is that, reading is very much an introspective exercise. It might be very long, but beyond the information that's being conveyed, there's also a lot of introspection that's happening that you lose when you just listen to a summary. When something's being read to you or summarized for you, you lose that sort of introspective experience, and people don't really realize that. But what you were mentioning, as much as it sounds dystopic, it's really happening. At the moment, companies around the world from all sorts of industries are competing for attention, and they're trying to make things shorter and shorter and shorter. And I think it's really the cycle that's just going to really affect us on the psychological level too. And so really, it makes sense when you say that, nowadays to finish an 800-page books, a person would be like, why?
I think reading is just an act. It's like going to the gym for the mind. That's all. It's like lifting weights. If you want to really train your mind hard, you've got to read a longer one. Shorter ones are basically just like essays, right? And then they don't require as much effort, and they don't engage you as much. And I think people nowadays are putting too much attention on the physical training of the physical side of the training, the body, while forgetting that the mind is perhaps just as important, if not more. And the only way, to me, to train one's mind is to read. I mean, you can't be forever attending university, having tutorials, even though they're very useful. The best is to really read from time to time, even if you cannot always be reading, and just keep growing your mind, giving your mind something. It's almost like oxygen to me.